Good afternoon, or good morning, or hello and welcome, depending on whatever time zone you are in. Thanks so much for joining us. We will kick things off with some introductions. So my name is Jackie Satera. I serve as the Director for Residential Education at Bucknell University, and she, her, hers pronouns.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Quarez. I serve as the Director of Residence Life here at Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. Pronouns are he, him, his.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Moses, Director of Residence and Student Life at Goldie Beacom College, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
So we want to thank everyone for coming today to this presentation. It's a very timely presentation, a really important one. Today, we're going to use our time together to discuss how we can support and help our staff, and that's across the board from student staff to grad staff to full-time professionals, and how we can support and appreciate them and make sure that they're kind of navigating this new world we're all working in efficiently, effectively, and successfully. We're going to start off with a small brief presentation, and then from there, we're going to go ahead and break out into smaller breakout groups where we'll collaborate and engage and kind of toss around some ideas.
So to kick us off, this semester is challenging for us all, no matter what level or position that we hold. We are on the front lines handling whatever comes our way, being asked to do a lot and potentially wear many different hats. So we have the party hat, because I'm sure you all can relate that we're being asked to plan and implement programs to keep our students engaged and connected. And then we have the magician hat, because some days it feels like we need to make miracles happen. And I'm sure if we were to ask you right now, you could add a bunch of different types of hats to the list here. So with all that, sometimes it truly feels like we are putting out fire after fire during this fall semester. But as we move through the slides, we're going to share some resources and tips for supporting and advocating staff members. So just keep in mind that you may hear a word or a tip on one slide, for example, when we're talking about supporting RAs, that can really be tweaked or shift to support and advocate for staff at all levels. So we just encourage you to think about that. So I am going to pass it back to Stephen.
Thanks, Jackie. All right, so I'm going to have the pleasure today of talking about how we can support and show appreciation for our student staff, our frontline folks, those that have boots on the ground directly more than any of us. Starting off with appreciation. So RA appreciation is huge. With RA appreciation, you kind of have to do more than just think of them on that day every year that we kind of do some fun, nice activities for them, which is usually, just so you know, the week of the 15th in February, for those that are always wondering when RA Appreciation Week or Day is. This has to be kind of taken to the next level this year, though. You need to kind of step up your game and how you're appreciating them and showcasing what, showcasing or helping them with what they're doing. So a couple of things that I've seen be successful in different areas are making sure that you're consistently showing them appreciation by doing things like RA of the month. So kind of selecting an RA or two that really has stepped above, gone above and beyond, and just done a lot, more so than most of their peers. Then you take it to the next level and do something like a bulletin board of the month. So for those that are a little bit more introverted and are more creative and showcase their talents with like using crafts and whatnot, that's kind of how you can show them some appreciation, giving them like a little certificate, maybe a little goodie bag and a thank you at their staff meeting. Program of the month is something also that I think might be beneficial now. Our RAs more than ever now, our student staff have to kind of think outside the box in how they're doing programming, because it's for the most part going to be virtually this upcoming fall and winter. So highlighting their programs would be a great way to showcase some appreciation and giving them a little bit of credit for that amongst their peers. Birthdays. I know this is common. We all celebrate everybody's birthdays. It's kind of what we do in student affairs, but it's important not to forget them more than ever this year. I think everybody needs to be reminded and have a special day, and give them a cake and give them a cupcake, whatever it is that they prefer, whatever baked good of their choice. Decorating their doors in their residence halls is actually something that has been done forever. I remember when I was an RA, that's what my supervisor would do. So find those amazing opportunities where you want to celebrate them, whether it's they just got into a fraternity or sorority, or they just passed an exam, or they had a great, last week and they did something. Well, then decorate and kind of showcase that on their door. It kind of also shows their residents, it kind of shows off a little bit to their residents as well that, they're doing a great job and they're kind of being this amazing student staff support. Make sure that you are also doing random things like surprising them on any given moment. So I always go back to one of the best things that I really enjoy that my supervisor would do when I was a student staff, and that's these little RA survival kits. I'm sure you all know that. I'll put it in the chat, but basically you give them like a goodie bag with all these amazing little things in it. There's like little notes in it that says like, here's a paper clip for keeping it together. Here's a battery for keeping energized. Things like that go the extra mile, and students really appreciate that, and it just makes them feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and we all like feeling warm and fuzzy during a global pandemic, I think. Students first. So it's really important to make sure that you're putting students first and foremost. Remember that they are students first. They're not full-time professionals. They're not grads. They're on the front lines and they still have a lot of academic responsibilities. So make sure that you're checking in and how they're doing academically. You want to make sure that this job isn't going to impact them this year like it wouldn't any other year. Although they have responsibilities, that doesn't mean that they trump anything else, no pun intended. They trump anything else that might come in their way during this global pandemic. Make sure that you're advocating for them at meetings. So now more than ever, I can tell you as an SHO and our SHO calls, we hear a lot about at the larger level when we're meeting with other administrators, a lot is being thrown on the RAs, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. And this was important that we as professionals and as supervisors of student staff advocate for them and make sure that we're not putting them in any danger or putting them in a position where we wouldn't do anything that they're going to be doing. I think that they'll appreciate that and also keeps them safe. And accountability, this is the hard part. So part of supporting them is also holding them accountable when they're not doing their job. So make sure that you are holding them accountable. And if they're not doing their job, check in, support, document if necessary, but it's important not to just let things slide during this time. Checking in is also really important as well during this time. So make sure that you're creating spaces and time for them to kind of vent and talk about how they're feeling, not just about the position, but about classes, about life. This is hard. Remember being 18 or 19 or 20. Can you imagine going through that during a global pandemic? They need that extra space and time. Make sure that you are also doing more one-on-ones maybe, that this way they can kind of like engage and discuss things more privately if need be, if they are having a little bit more of a harder time with certain things. And finally, avoiding canceling things. So this generation really uses time as almost a sense of a form of currency. So you need to please make sure that you're avoiding canceling things last minute. That really, for some reason, does upset them. They have their whole schedule set up. If you know most of your RAs at this point, their entire lives are planned and coordinated. So make sure that you are not canceling anything arbitrarily last minute, and that when you are planning things, make sure that you're looking at their time and using it before you make any plans. And finally, ongoing engagement. Make sure that you are consistently doing trainings that are up to date during this pandemic. So your in-services and your all staff should not look the same, obviously, this year. You should be incorporating different information and incorporating new information and how they should manage, interactions with their students and utilizing whatever the new CDC guidelines or whatever your new university guidelines are and going over that during your all staffs and major meetings. Use that time also to have visitors from other departments. This is a great opportunity to have the AVP or the VP of your institution come and speak to the student staff. Your RAs will appreciate that. It makes them feel like they're part of the actual team and not just these student staff members that are used arbitrarily. It makes them feel more also engaged in the position and helping, feeling like they're doing a sense of helping their students and their peers. And finally, make sure that you are continuing staff bonding, whether that's virtual or, social distance. Make sure that you're having certain programs where they can engage with each other, have fun, whether it's outdoor movies or a social distance lunch or a trivia night via virtual Kahoot. That would be a great opportunity to kind of show support for your RA staff. I'm going to kick it over to Jocelyn now for graduate staff.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So our graduate assistants at this time, especially during COVID, have really become our lost cohort. And needless to say, in every step of the way, they are our backbone to our departments. They're completing tasks, doing projects that professional staff members may not really have the time to do or focus on, and our undergraduate students really don't have the skill to complete. They are indeed our superheroes. So it's important that we take care of them. So first, being intentional with our conversations. It's important to have intentional conversations with our GAs. They need to know and they want your guidance, whether it's guided or organic. Just dive into the conversation because it really, really matters. It's super important even to create themes for the conversation. So let's have a conversation today about self-care, or let's talk about, your professional or your personal goals. But it's super important to make sure that you're having these conversations with them and that they're really getting something out of it. So next, space, providing space for them to excel academically. Now during COVID, we have some downtime and we have some flexibility, and it's super important to give them the opportunity to really focus on their academic career. As you know, as graduate assistants, that's their role. They're coming to school normally for free, and you're probably providing them housing, but it's super important to give them the platform to really succeed academically. And it's really, our time for them, and really the opportunity for us to show them that we appreciate them by giving them this time. The next one, reestablishing their purpose. They need to know their value, not only from you, but the department. So going over expectations, speaking about, what their goals are, if they have them, if they haven't met them. But as their supervisor, taking that extra step to really show them that you care about what they're going through. And of course, providing them with a platform to voice their concerns and their fears, especially during COVID. There's so many levels of emotions that we're feeling right now. And, as a senior housing officer, I go through them often. And I know that our graduate assistants are feeling the same. So create the space and make them feel some sense of security. Next, be super transparent about the field and the potential future of higher education. COVID has really set a really huge tone about some of the current trends that are happening within our field, especially with positions, from furloughs to layoffs, the dissolving of positions, and terminations on all levels. And so it's really important that you talk about it to them, because there has definitely been a shift right now in higher education, and people are fearful about what's next. So start the conversation with them now. Talk about being a team player. It's not just for the department, but it's for the well-being of the institution. So there may be opportunities in other departments, whether it's advising or admissions or working in the library some hours, but really encourage them to do what they can, because this is the time where we all have to, put the boots on and get to work. So this shows that they're willing to do whatever it takes for the betterment, again, like I said, of the institution, but most importantly, to secure their position as a graduate assistant. And it's really important to start having those conversations with them. They're fearing this. What is going to be next? I'm going through this master's program in higher education. Is there going to be higher education? Will there be a res life? What are those things for them? But if you're encouraging them right now to take part in all components of the institution, it'll really help them see the bigger picture. Next one, our favorite word throughout COVID has been self-care and giving grace. It's super important, as we think about what matters, you have to make sure that they're putting themselves first. There's so much that's going on, tasks that need to be complete, decisions that are made within seconds that affect all levels. But most importantly, it's important to give them the opportunity, just to feel supported, just to feel, mentally, physically valued. And we have to do our part in that. So giving them some grace and giving them some space and opportunity to really evaluate for themselves personally what COVID has done for them and how has it affected them. But most importantly, how they are as an individual, and really all the components that they offer and that they bring to the table. So thank you so much for listening to the importance of supporting your graduate staff. As I said, they are our lost cohort, and we need to make sure that they're safe. So now I'd like to pass it over to Jackie.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So we want to spend a little bit of time talking about supporting professionals. So when thinking about words that encompass encompass appreciating and supporting professional staff. I have just a few that I want to take a couple moments to highlight. So the first one is advocating. So I would argue right now, more than ever, supervisors need to be advocating for their professional staff members. The work that is being done needs to be recognized. And so also thinking about what their to-do list looks like and how that could potentially change and shift. What is on that to-do list that can potentially be taken off temporarily or even maybe permanently, looking forward, to the future, thinking about also engaging in conversations about what are we currently doing, that we can then maybe pause or maybe stop all together. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with like the stoplight activity where, you have a stoplight and you have the red light, the yellow light, and the green light. And so you can take some time with really all levels of staff, but thinking about professional staffs, what do we need to stop doing at this moment that we could potentially come back to in the future, but right now it's got to go. For the yellow light, what maybe some things that we can pause if there is time, space, and energy to do it, we can come back to it. And then green, of course, is, yep, we're doing it, let's continue to do it, or we're not doing it, and we need to start doing it. So just something to think about. And I think also just overall advocating for change. And sometimes with this, that really means managing up for that. So next, I want to talk about communication. So communication encompasses so much. And so I want to start by tackling the listening piece to that. We need to be engaged in active listening. So asking for input, listening for suggestions, especially when decisions are being made, who's around the table, and how can folks have more of a voice in what's going on right now and how decisions are being made. Effective communication is really key. Just because folks are talking does not mean that it's effective. And so I really want you to think about that right now when we say, a strength is communication or we're communicating, is it effective? And what does that look like? And what does that mean for you and your team during this time? And then also with that, creating spaces and opportunities for frustrations to talk about it. Maybe having a little venting session if that's appropriate, depending on the space, but then also creating that space to work through it and to move forward after that. And then also transparency falls underneath communication. And so when opportunities allow, having open and honest conversations with your team is really important during these times. And of course, you don't want to forget providing ongoing feedback. Next, let's talk a little bit about appreciation. Of course, as always, appreciation is a big part of the work that we do. So thinking about when it's appropriate maybe for random gifts to lift people up through rough times. Also remembering that a simple thank you can really go a long way, whether that's through an email, a card, virtually over Zooms, or however folks are connecting these days. Remembering that thank you really, really can go a long way is really key during this time. And then thinking about what appreciation can look like for different individuals, knowing how people like to be appreciated is also really, really important, but that can also look like providing opportunities for folks to be creative, but also not forgetting about creating the space for them to have autonomy and what that can look like right now in their communities and with the work that they're doing, whether that be on different committees or collateral assignments or however your different offices and departments might be made up. And of course, self-care, so important, and something that we talk about often. For this, you really need to, as a supervisor, you really need to take the time to know what that looks like individually for all of your team members, because it looks different for everybody, and knowing that is really, really key and important. So this could look like encouraging breaks, encouraging folks to take vacation, take time off, being flexible, truly being flexible. Maybe that looks like allowing folks to work from, people I know are working from home these days, maybe not in all offices of housing and res life, because again, we are on the front lines putting out those fires and wearing many different hats. But when time and space allows, maybe, encouraging folks to just work from their PJs on their couch. And that could potentially, be helpful for folks or look like self-care for others. Giving back time when you can, I think, is a really important thing to think about if you're in a position to do that. How can you, whether it's a late night being on call or potentially a late night positive COVID case, if people are working through the night, can you give them back time during the day, the following day, or even later on in the week as people's schedules allow? And then having follow through as a supervisor is really, really important, specifically related to self-care. So we cannot be talking about it and then not supporting it. So really think about that. You know, we talk about self-care a lot, but if you're not in a space to be able to give it or support it, then we really need to change the way that that's showing up in conversations and expectations. So I would just challenge folks to think about that a little bit more. And so for an example, if you would like one about that, so if people are off, don't email them, don't text them, maybe wait to connect with them. That's why we have on-call folks. And so thinking about how those on-call individuals can maybe show up. So that is all I have for this slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jocelyn.
Thanks, Jackie. So this is the best part about the roundtable. We have an opportunity to collaborate together and really put our heads together, our ideas together, our experience together to kind of flesh out some of these questions. So I just want you all to think about them. We probably already got a request for your breakout room. The presenters and myself and some ACUOI representatives will be moderating the groups, but we really encourage you all to share. So the first question, what has been working for you? What has support looked like for you? How are you being supported? What have you done to appreciate your staff? And any lesson learned, especially during our new normal this time during the pandemic. So we're excited to get into our breakout groups, and we can't wait to collaborate and learn more from you.
We're back!
Back in the main room.
It's good to see everybody.
That was awesome. I hope everyone definitely got something out of the groups. And now kind of what we're gonna do is, from all of our groups, I think in our group, we pretty much got to the end. So I'm hoping that all of you got to the end in your groups as well too. But we're gonna ask for maybe our note taker from each of the groups to kind of highlight some of the things that were discussed in the groups and some of the ideas and concepts so that we can all share. And just a reminder, this Google Doc will be used and kept by you all. So feel free to kind of peek in on the other groups and everything so that you have some takeaways from this session as well. I guess we can start with Bernadine, if you don't mind being the first person from my group, if you want to share maybe some of the highlights that we went over in our group.
Sure. So the What Has Been Working for You group, we mentioned that there was a game, I believe it was called Among Us, that they can make a group for you and the staff to play together, and that seems to be a really big trend right now. Another one we talked about was a self-care assessment being sent home to help start the conversation of what is self-care for them and how do they start it. Then we mentioned to bring treats and check in on them and just be there as a person in case they just need somebody to lean on. And then we also mentioned motivational Mondays are still super helpful throughout the semester, as they need to be reminded that they are still students in this world on top of everything else they're dealing with. What has support looked like for you? We had mentioned, being able to sleep in occasionally, getting told to take a day off here and there, making sure you're taking time for yourself and having open and honest dialogue with your supervisor about what you need to take care of yourself. How are you being supported? We mentioned there was forums to openly discuss everything, establish a culture of teamwork and collaboration, and to do check-ins with staff members, whether student staff or professional staff. And then what have you done to appreciate your staff? They mentioned if you can to increase stipends, that's always a nice way. Mail care packages, sonic runs, celebrate the class that just graduated, so they haven't had a chance to have the official ceremony yet. Do little tokens of appreciation. We mentioned warm and fuzzy kudos bags that people can decorate, or virtually right now since a lot of people aren't in person. And then maybe creating a Google Docs where everybody can join in and kind of say nice things to each other throughout the semester.
I can go. So this is Sasha in group 5. We didn't get to the end because we had such a great conversation, but I will share some of the things that were said that might be a little bit different. So we actually talked a lot about communication and how communication plays a big part about what is working, that when staff really understand the why and they're getting information and as high up as possible that information coming from, there was some talk about bringing in VPs. It really helps with the transparency, being honest about struggles, being honest that things are changing unexpectedly. And yes, I know yesterday I told you this and today it's not that anymore. It's frustrating for your students. It's frustrating for you. I acknowledge that and I leave space for that feeling. So we talked about that. Keeping informal connections going. Everything doesn't have to be business, especially if your staff are not on campus, like if they're working remotely. Don't have every interaction you have together be about business. You can still have, sending funny memes or having a game night, or if the department used to do potlucks, do a show and tell of food in your own homes. Try to keep those traditions going even if you're not together. And then we talked a lot about not pouring from an empty cup. So what support looks like for you, that as a supervisor, you also deserve support and grace and space. And so having honest conversations with those you supervise too about how you're feeling and being as transparent as possible. And then conversations like these are helpful for people to feel supported as supervisors. And then being allowed to take things off your plate and recognizing that this is not a typical year for supervisors either. Yeah, that was a lot of what we talked about.
Awesome.
So Abby from my group will talk for us.
Hi, everyone. We're echoing a lot of things that have already been covered, but again, giving space for staff to communicate feelings and concerns, where, again, as you all talked about as facilitators, where appropriate. The same thing for students, so both of those things. At my current institution, we created a residence leadership, or excuse me, a residential experience board, which is where they were able to communicate directly with our senior staff, and they do that weekly with a representative from each building. That hasn't been something we've done in the past, and that has given them a space to sort of give their perspective on what's been going on, kind of basically through this unrest. That's been helpful. Tatiana talked about some really great icebreakers and some incorporating themes to kind of lighten the mood of particular staff meetings and so forth. And I guess we really covered probably most of it in there. And then making sure that if this is not your bag, that you are reaching out to other people to also know that this might be more of their area and they can also support you as well.
Did we get to all the teams?
No, it's Bess here from group 4, and what has been working for you, I think we have said that it's been a rough time, and especially for professional staff. But I think the best thing to do, or what the group has said, is to take a day off and create some space. And then one important thing that we said was to have intentional conversations, to really speak about the things that is bothering, and to really get it out there and not crop it up. And then there's a lot of work that is happening behind the scenes that people are not really aware of, very much so with auxiliary service and support staff. They had to adjust their schedules and do less micromanaging, and that gave them more freedom to be more flexible. So what the support looked like was that there were some people who said that they still had their full budget, and that was really supportive for them to continue doing the important work that they are doing. And then in RA meetings, there were lots of kudos to appreciate one another, but it has been lacking in the virtual space. So certainly not the way it should have been. And then I think one last thing that that was really that stood out is that some people felt that they feel supported, but they're not so sure as to whether they are supporting anyone else. So yes, I think that was more or less the gist of what we discussed in our group.
Thank you for that. That was very helpful. Any other final groups want to speak or share what they got out of their groups? Well, we're at almost time, but I want to take this time to kind of see if there's any last minute words of wisdom or anything anybody would like to share, any concepts or ideas. Now would be a great time. I see so many amazing leaders on this call and so many amazing supervisors and folks in the field. So please feel free to share. Unmute yourselves and just share.
Hi, y'all. It's Anthony from Drexel ACC. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Jocelyn. Anyway, finding praise and different ways of recognizing my staff has been a challenge even before COVID. Here at American Campus Communities, our CAs are more like leasing agents versus our typical traditional resident assistants, which is totally different and new for me, coming from like an on-campus student housing place. So I've been reading The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, which has been like, you know, the kind of like the same thing as the 5 love languages in a relationship. It's a workplace version of it. And I love it. It's definitely been challenging me on finding new ways of appreciating a student staff that may not be familiar with a resident director RA relationship. But yeah, some of the takeaways so far that I've been getting from that book is like, you know, it's RAs and CAs, student staff, graduate assistants, they're all still individuals. And so how they prefer to get praise for, or even getting a thank you for that matter is all different based on their individual personalities. Some people are just uncomfortable with total like public recognition so that's been helpful. And I've been seeing it different in attitude and personalities through my experiences from this book. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with y'all.
Thank you, Anthony. Can you put the name of the book in the chat so folks can make note of it as well?
Yes, please. I didn't know they made a workplace version of that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the other takeaway is like being specific about when you say thank you. You know, during our staff meetings, when we say like, thanks for a great job, to be able to say exactly what you're thankful for helps them remember exactly what they did so they can repeat it again. And that's how you change the culture and change how your staff performs effectively. So yeah, I can put that in.
One thing I would add, it relates more to the residents, not exactly staff, but helping the residents is not only good for them, but it makes our jobs easier. One thing our institution is doing is recognizing residents that are always seen being positive members of the community in these last few very trying months. And I've noticed we have a decrease in judicial incidents and things happening. And I'm not sure if that might be a big part. What we do is we every week nominate 4 residents for these community awards. And we notify them that they've been selected, and they don't win something major. It's like a $25 Amazon gift card, but exactly what Anthony said, when we've nominated them and we tell them specifically why, the residents often say, thank you for noticing me, or thank you for seeing my efforts. And I feel like that in turn has helped the RAs and all of us, because like I said, we're not having the volume of incidents we've had in the past. We do have fewer residents this term, but even proportionately, it's much, much less than in the past. And I think that's a big part of it. It's very important to see the people. I try to do that with the RA staff too, to thank them specifically and to just remember this is so basic, but easy to forget sometimes. They are people first. And I see institutionally sometimes this tendency when someone needs someone to do something, they'll say, what about the RAs? can the RAs do this? And I'm like, can we not always jump to the RAs first? Can we remember they are students going through equally challenging times in these past few months? So I think those are all helpful factors, advocating for them. It's easier to advocate for them than it is for them to speak up, I've noticed, at least with my student population. They tend to be a little bit more hesitant to feel like they're questioning a policy. So they'll basically just do whatever you tell them. So then I feel like I really have to make sure to step in and buffer them from that in a nice way. You know, I'm not trying to like make enemies, but I want to like protect them.
That's really good. Thank you, Becky. That's really good feedback, both Becky and Anthony. Just to kind of, as we're getting ready to close out the hour, I also want to put a plug in for Akuho'ai. So one of the ways you can show appreciation and show some support for Akuho'ai, or I'm sorry, for your staff, is there's a program called the Akuho'ai Heroes. I'm sure you've all gotten emails about it, where they're kind of asking for nominations for people that go above and beyond right now. It could be a student, it could be a staff member, it could be a custodian, it could be anyone in your institution at all, and they will highlight them on their social media and on their website. It's a really nice way to kind of show some appreciation. So that's one way. And also Akuho'ai just released, and I think NASPA as well, just released some awards information too. If you want to nominate a colleague, nominate a person at your institution, a student staff, professional staff, anything, those are great opportunities to do that. So yeah, I'm going to kick it back. First, I want to thank my co-hosts, Jackie and Jocelyn, my partners in crime. And I want to just give it back to Megan to close it out.
Okay, great. Thank you. And yes, thank you, Jackie and Jocelyn and Stephen, especially for Stephen is on the membership committee. Bess, who you heard today, is also on the membership committee. Sasha is also on the membership committee. We have quite a few folks here from that, and we do put on game nights and webinars, and we're kind of the ambassadors for the association. So we kind of get to know everybody's business in a nice way, if you will. So if you're interested in that, let me know. You know, I had a thought really quick. When I was at Ohio Dominican University, this sounds kind of corny, but it was so nice. We used to send letters, or well, I guess now it'd be emails, right? Because that's how old I am, or just a quick, you know, call or whatever to somebody else important in the university to tell them that person did a great job. So if you can imagine, you know, the president, you know, getting something, you know, from you about your employee, that makes them feel really good. If we knew a family member or a coworker or something, we would also kind of do that. And one of the things I did that they loved was they would all put in their least favorite tasks, and I would pull one out of a jar and do it for them. Now, obviously there's a limit to that, but they loved that. And it was such a relief, because there are certain things that people just dread doing, and it's nice to kind of take a break from that. So those were just a couple things that I wanted to share as well. Stephen, did you want me to put the link to the Google Doc for everybody, or were you going to send out an email with it, or?
Sure, if you can put the link on the chat, that's awesome. And then we'll also send out an email with it. We might also have some additional resources for you all too that we're collecting that we'll send out with that, so that you are fully stocked up with tips and advice on how you can show appreciation and support your staff.
Okay, great. I'm just going to throw that in here really quick. Here's the Google Doc. And you can add to it as well, right, Stephen? Like, as you go along, if there's something that you thought of that you didn't think of today. I just wanted to highlight a couple other things. We do have more webinars coming up, and again, they're free. Coming up next week, we have a really interesting one. I think it's going to be very popular, called Campus Speech and the Election. Very timely right now. That's going to be an interesting session. And then there are a series of roundtables for TPE for kind of career focus that are going to be coming up. Job preservation, articulating your value. So if anybody, you know, wants to attend that on behalf of someone else or for yourself, take a look at those. Those are on our website under webinars and roundtables. Thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate it. And I believe Jocelyn mentioned this, so I'm going to steal it and say also to those who supervise, happy Bosses Day. Today is Bosses Day, and thank you for all that you do. It is the fact that you are here means that you are a caring and compassionate boss and that you are doing a fabulous job. So give yourself a pat on the back for that. Anything else from my presenters? Are we good?
And that was great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah,
You're
thank
amazing.
you. This will be on the YouTube channel, the Akuai YouTube channel, as well as all of the membership committee webinars. So thanks again.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everyone. Happy Friday.
Bye, everyone.